Hey, how's everybody today? I hope you're doing good. We are still in Indiana trying to finish up our solar install, but it has rained every day. We've been up here and it's been hot. Today is the only day. It was a clear, pretty day, but it was still kind of warm. Um, I hope everybody's doing good. We
Hear us well?
Can you hear Dina well? Because I'm in a problem. I've got sciatic nerve
Hello?
sciatic nerve real bad. And hello from Morocco. Wow, that's a first. Uh, my leg's been hurting real bad, and my sciatic nerve is today real bad. So Dina's gonna do a good bit tonight. Can you hear Dina?
Hey, y'all, can you hear me?
Maui says no. I don't know if we can hear you or not. You may have to.
What if I can turn on my speakers?
1 a.m. in Morocco. Wow. I can hear both well. Okay, everybody says yes. So I don't know. You just speak up when you do if you talk. Um, Not too well, Maui says. I think that fan or whatever you're cooking over there is causing some interference too. She is a bit far off. It's Medina, Meddena. I call her Dina. Um, Unfortunately, she is kind of about 4 or 5 feet from me because we had to, like I said, I'm trying to keep my hello, Brittany, keep my foot elevated.
Is that Brittany, the Brittany from our store?
Is this Brittany from our store, or is that some other Brittany? Brittany.
That would be nice to know.
Uh, yes, absolutely. If y'all could pray for our son, he's not. He's I don't know. Such painful condition. A homeopathic product called Nerve Fix has helped me with bouts of nerve issues. I will check that out for sure. It's Canada Day today. Is that like the 4th of July? Uh, Let me. Okay, hold on just a minute. I'm gonna try to pull that back up. Nerve Fix. I'm gonna try to look that up. Um,
I'm stranger, Brittany. Brittany, you're not a stranger.
uh, I'll put that over here on my other page here, so I won't forget it. How to look it up. Uh, does it have any adverse effects from other medication? Because I'm on other medication.
Nerve flossing.
Nerve flossing. Is that like an exercise? Because I think I did that last night.
Hey, Beach Bum. Hey, Aaron.
Uh,
If y'all have trouble hearing me, let me know because what we're talking about tonight is very important.
yeah, Dennis gonna be doing a lot of it tonight
I've
because
been researching
I
for the
I
past
I have
3
been in
days.
I've been in some pain today. Unfortunately, still had to move around. Uh, all right, well, let's get into it a little bit and let Dina, because Dina has went overboard on what research today, in my opinion.
I had well over 100 pictures and
Yeah.
it only let me use 60.
Well, boo hoo.
Okay, put up the first picture.
Okay, first, let's do this. Talk about this. She's been looking into these unmarked graves of young Indian children in Canada and the United States.
That's not the first picture.
I know that's not. That's what we said we want to talk about first.
It is, but that's not the first picture.
It is the one you gave me. What can I help you with?
It's the laurel tree.
Okay, I'll do that in a minute. 751 unmarked graves found in Canada. You're gonna have to read it because I cannot read it.
Y'all, I should have done it all tonight because he's going to mess it up.
Okay, look. Do you want me to go that tree first?
Yes, that's what I want you to
Okay, hold on just a minute.
do. No.
There you go.
Yeah, Maui, it is big news in Canada. I thought this tree represents, um, that to me just shows the pain and everything they're going through. One of the things is the residential schools were established when there was a treaty between Canada and the Indians. And in that treaty, the Canadians said the Indians had to let their children go to schools, to residential schools. And not realizing what they were doing, they agreed to it. Can y'all hear me okay? Somebody give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay.
Why don't you come over here and just do it off of here? I mean, you can't look at the
They got a
thing.
thumbs up.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So the Canadian government, one of the reasons that they wanted to have the children be brought into um, residential schools was because of um, the water, the wood, all of Canada's assets. They wanted all those resources. Okay, going way too fast. All those resources they wanted to have access to. And so instead of going to war with the Indians, they decided that they would get rid of every last Indian. Okay. Canadians' indigenous group said Wednesday that the search using ground penetrating radar has found 182 human remains and unmarked graves at a site near a former Catholic church residential school that housed indigenous children taken from their families. The latest discovery is near Cranbrook, British Columbia, follows a report of similar findings at two other church run schools, one of more than 600 unmarked graves and another 215 bodies. Cranbrook is 524 miles from Vancouver. The Lower Kootenay Band said in its release that it's beginning to use the technology last year to search the site for former St. Eugene's Mission School, which was operated by a Catholic Church from 1912 until the early 1970s. And they have found unmarked graves, some about 3 feet deep. There is also mounds where the children are buried on top of each other. So it's not just going to be a few. And I really believe that there's coming a day in America that we're going to have a day of reckoning too. Canada is already there. Um, we are going to have our day of reckoning because we had over 300 residential schools that were run by the Catholic Church or other Christian groups. Um, and out of all the studying I've done, I only found one school where there was I didn't read any report of anybody complaining. But so the Indian children in the residential schools died at a higher rate than the children that were in their villages.
Or you can read that.
It is believed that the remains of those people from the bands of the some nation, which includes the Lower Kootenay Band and other neighboring First Nation communities. Chief Jason Louis of the Lower Kootenay Band, which is also a member of the other nation, I can't say its name, I'm not going to try, has called the discovery deeply personal since his relatives attended the school. Let's call this for what it was. It's mass murder of the indigenous people. And I agree. That's what it looks like what they tried to do. They wanted to take the Indian out of the child, and it didn't matter if the child was killed. The Nazis were held accountable for their war crimes. I see no difference in local priests and nuns and the brothers who are responsible for mass murder to be held accountable for their part in this attempt of genocide of the indigenous people. From the 19th century until the 1970s, more than 150,000 indigenous children were forced to attend state-funded Christian boarding schools in an effort to assimilate them into the Canadian society. Thousands upon thousands of children died there of disease and other causes that they never returned to their family. Nearly three-quarters of 130 resident schools were run by Roman Catholics. The missionary congregations, which others operated by Presbyterians, Angel, I can't even say it. Angel, I can't think of it, guys. The United Church of Canada, which today is the largest Protestant denomination in the country. Canadian government has acknowledged the physical and sexual abuse was rampant in the schools, with students beaten for speaking their own language. Y'all, they would bring these kids as young as 5 years old into these schools, and they would speak English to these children who had never been, well, here it says somewhere as young as 3 years old. These children would come in and they didn't speak English, and the nuns and priests would speak to them in English, and if they spoke back in their own language, they were punished. They were beaten. The one little boy recalls, he's a man now, of course, but he recalls his hands being so swollen from being beaten because he kept speaking in his native language. They were going to wipe out the Indian race, is what they were going to do. If a child escaped, because children tried to escape because it was so bad, that if they escaped and they were brought back, they were taken into the bench parties. This was things. It's better when I'm talking if you put up a picture. These were bench parties.
What you put all this on there first.
The priest would have bench parties, and what they would do is they would beat the boys. They would make them display their buttocks, and then they would beat them. And
if you go through this, then I'll go to the pictures next. I'll skip the last thing.
Of most recent findings, Canadian's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he had asked that the national flag on the Peace Tower remain at half-mast for Canada Day on Thursday to honor the Indigenous children who died in residential schools. On Tuesday, it was announced that a group of Indigenous leaders will visit the Vatican later this year to press for apology from the Roman Catholic Church. Y'all, there's no apology.
Okay, let's go. I'll skip all this down. We'll go down to some of these pictures.
Of Catholic bishops said Indigenous leaders will visit the Vatican between December 17th and 20th to meet Pope Francis and foster meaningful encounters of dialogue and healing. After the graves were found at Kamloops, the Pope expressed his pain over the discovery and pressed religious and political authorities to shed light on this sad affair. But he did not offer an apology sought by the First Nation and Canadian government. Louis said he wanted more concrete action than apologies. Tommy, you may have to read the questions on the side because I can't. I'm really done with the government and churches saying
can't do both.
Said justice delayed is justice denied. The Canadian government formally apologized for the policy and the abuses in 2008. In addition, the Presbyterian, Anglican, United Churches have apologized for their roles. Apology was one of the 94 recommendations from from Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But the Canadian Bishops' Conference said in 2018 that the Pope could not. Where's it at?
Well, you tell me to look at this other. I can't do both then. That's the thing.
That's fine.
After this, we'll skip this and go to the pictures, so I can't do both.
Since the discovery of unmarked graves, the site of the former resident schools, there have been several fires at churches across Canada. There's also been vandalism targeting churches and statues in the cities. 4 small Catholic churches on Indigenous land in rural southern British Columbia have been destroyed by suspicious fires, and vacant former Anglican churches in the northwest BC were recently damaged. What the police said could be arson. On Wednesday, Alberta's premier condemned what he calls arson attacks at Christian churches after historic parishes were destroyed by fire. They talk about the fires that are going on. Okay, so I'm trying to keep this in some sort of order, y'all. We got the pictures mixed up somehow. The residential schools were run like concentration camps. If a child escaped, he was brought back. Sometimes They would be taken in front of the children and forced to bare their buttocks, and then they would be whipped with what is called a whip with the cat of nine eyes. And it was a whip, a leather whip that had three straps coming off of it, and then there were three steel balls on each strap. So that was the nine eyes. And they would beat the children with it, and sometimes that beating would take deep cuts into the children, and it would cut their flesh. The main goal was to destroy the Indian until there wasn't an Indian in Canada. That is what they said. You see this little girl right here? Her hair is going to be cut off because to an Indian, their hair was their dignity, their wisdom, their strength. And so they would cut the girl's hair off and shave the boys. Yeah, Aaron, it is hard to listen to, but you know what? We've got to bring to light. You wonder why so many young people are missing from the reservations now? They're disappearing. It's because of what their forefathers, what these other generations have gone through since the 1800s. This is what they learned. Did you know that in Indian culture, it is considered an abomination for an Indian adult to raise his hand to strike a child? They are not to do that. That's not something they do. And yet, in the Indian culture now, it is something that goes on. Just like the sexual abuse. These children were sexually abused in these residential schools. And because they were sexually abused in these schools, then they would go back and sexually abuse their children. Not all of them. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that a lot have. There was a priest, and he told the children that the sexual things that he was doing to them and that he was having them do to him was their way into heaven. That otherwise they would go to hell. And he told them also, they were told that their parents that were born Indian, it was a crime to be born an Indian. And that their parents lived on a reservation where the devil was.
What is this? I've got a picture
My
of.
parents were evil and sadistic. My long hair meant the world to me, so my mom hacked it off just to watch me cry and die inside. I am so sorry for that cheating war. I am so sorry. You know, I didn't have a mother that stayed around most of my life. I had four mothers by the time I was 15. And so I did not learn how to be a mother from my experiences. What I learned from was from God, and I did not do it perfect. My children will tell you I'm not a perfect mother. As much as I tried, I screwed up, but I never abused my children in these ways. I mean, yes, they got spankings, and yes, they got time out and stuff like that, but you know, as parents, God gave us these children that we are to raise up to know Him and to love Him. And when you have fathers, priests who claim to be godly men doing these things to these children, it makes me sick. I don't know how the Catholic Church, and I don't know if any of you are Catholic, but if you are, you need to get to writing some letters. The Catholic Church has got a day of reckoning to come for them too, not just Canada. Canada turned their eyes away and let it happen. But so did a lot of the bishops. Because there's one priest that confessed to his bishop what he had done to one child, and he told him, don't do it anymore, and he moved him to another parish. And he did that 12 times. This man went on to, they came up with at least over 100 victims. Okay? This one priest, over 100 victims. You know how much time he got in jail? He got 6 years in jail.
What is this place we're looking at?
That's one of the schools. There's so many I couldn't put the names on them, but there's so many. The child, another thing, y'all, these children were forced to work. Remember I told you about some in Pennsylvania that were sent out to homes, farms for $10. They'd buy an Indian child and they'd put him to work, and if he didn't come back, they didn't report it, they didn't care. Um, when the little boys and girls would get there, the priest would go in and bathe them and show them how to bathe. And one man, I listened to the interview, he said, the first time you understood that he was teaching you how to do, take a bath. But when it happened all the time, you realized that this was not right. At St. Anne's, it was St. Anne's residential school was named the House of Horrors. When the children came in, instead of having a name, they gave them a number. They didn't even deserve a name. They got a number. Number 1, number 4, number 20. It's absolutely crazy. The sexual abuse was out of control at St. Anne's. Look at these kids. Some of them are smiling, but when you look at those little eyes, I don't know. When they were investigated at St. Anne's, they identified 70 abusers, priests and nuns, teachers. 70 abusers, but only 5 were held accountable. Why did the others 65 get to go free? That doesn't make any sense to me. But they will be held. There's a judgment day coming in heaven, and the Bible tells us to leave room for the wrath of God. So we're not supposed to go out and burn the churches down and stuff like that. No, but we are to hold people accountable so that they can't continue to abuse children. For 4 decades, a priest named Arthur Bowen abused boys and girls. 313 complaints were filed by the survivors so far, just so far. There's another school. 313 complaints so far. And you've got to realize this, a lot of people have died. This started in 1839, and I can't even imagine what those children went through. But the sex he forced on those children said he guaranteed them a place in heaven by doing that.
Is this one of the guys?
Yeah, that's one of the priests. He's the one that went. They moved 12 times. This is the one they moved 12 times. He got 6 years in prison for abusing over 100 girls and boys. The children not only suffered sexual abuse, but they suffered physical and emotional. The emotional abuse telling them not to go back to their reservations, not to go back to their parents because their parents were evil or that they worshiped devils. Can you imagine the emotions that put on those children? When they have torn down some of these schools, there have been skeletons of babies that were found there. When a girl got pregnant, yeah, I know, Aaron, I'm so sorry that this is sickening and it's depressing, but it's time to shine the light. This has been look at these eyes. These are children that are crying out to be found if they're never made it back to their parents, or to get some sort of sense of healing. The babies were either buried or incinerated that were born there by the girls that got pregnant. They were ostracized when they got pregnant. Well, I don't know. Some schools have one toilet per floor in the dormitories where the girls and boys slept. They didn't have a sink for them to wash up, just a toilet. And when they were thirsty, they would get up in the night and they would get a cup and they would go and take the tank, the top off of the tank, and they would get the water out of the back of the tank to drink. If they were caught drinking water, the nuns would make them drink cod liver oil. I don't understand it. I can't look at a child and think about doing something like that to a child. That's one of the bishops that covered everything up. Look at this. This is 1 out of 45 students of deaths. That number can just go right out the window. It's going to be at least 6 times more than that. So, a lot of the Indian culture, they learn by seeing, and they didn't learn the way that a lot of people learn. And some people are, they learn, like I learn better if you teach me and instead of me reading it. 49% of the deaths listed without a cause, 43% were listed without a location, and 32% were listed without a name. There are so many graves out there, and some that will never be found. Um, the sad part about this, that one of the things, if a child was left-handed, they would tie their hand down. They would tie their hand down to their body, and sometimes they would tie it so tight that their little hands would turn blue. And if they used their left hand, they would strike them, and sometimes the hands would swell up because they weren't. And this didn't just happen to Indian children. This happened to white American children or black American children. This happened to children all over because for some reason they thought left-handed children that was a demonic thing. I think the only time that these children had any kind of joy at these schools was at Christmas time. And I believe that's because people were coming in. So they would have dances, they would have toys, the nuns and the priests would speak to them in kind words. They were very kind to them. They brought them, all these presents. There's one picture in here where you used to see them eating, and it looks like China's out, for them to eat at. But it was only at Christmas time. And then it went right back to the abuse. When a priest died, they had several priests, of course, that died. And when a priest died, the children were told at the funeral that he's in heaven now. And some of the girls that I listened to said they had decided among themselves if he was in heaven because of what he had done to them, they didn't want to go to heaven. And so they wanted to be just bad enough, do just enough bad things that it would get them to go to hell, but it wouldn't get them beaten here. Y'all, think about that. They don't even want to go to heaven. The Mohawk school, there's a Mohawk residential school. It's called the Mohawk Residential School. They kidnapped children. There was one guy that was being interviewed, and he said his brother and his sister were walking down the road to go to his grandfather's, and this car pulled up, and the guy said, "Hey, I'll give you a ride," and they were like, "No," and they just kept on. And so I'm going to have to go back and read all y'all's comments. I'm sorry. I can't read them all right now, and I want to know your stories. But anyway, they kept walking, and he kept following them. And finally, he said, "Hey, would you like some ice cream? Let me take you to get some ice cream first." They got in the car, and they went with him. They got their ice cream, but when they left the ice cream shop, they never got back home. He took them to that school. I don't know if he was paid to take them to that school or not. But another thing, the police, the Royal Mountie Police, they were ordered to go and take the children from their parents and take them and turn them over to the schools. And one Mountie Police, he's on one of the tapes, and he's talking about how he knew in his heart it wasn't right, but he was ordered to do it. And he took a 5-year-old from her mom's arms, and the little girl screaming. And the little girl begging for her mom, and her mom crying. And, he took the child and dropped her off. And he said to this day, he cannot get over that. I mean, he was crying about what he had done. And one of the Indian girls, not one he had taken, but came to him as a woman and talked to him. And they talked about the stories. And she told him all the good you're doing now, because he's bringing to light these stories. He's telling his side of what happened. And so she said, what you're doing now makes up for all any bad that you might have done, but I can't believe you would do any bad. All these shoes and stuff in front of this residential school, that is for the 215 graves that have been found at that school, I believe. The schools have been closed for 25 years now. And, okay. Over 150, see the yellow flags out there? can't really see them all. Blue flags, yellow flags. Those are all what they believe are unmarked graves. Over 150,000 kids grew up without a home. 7 generations without roots. They have no home. They have no roots. You took a child and you broke that child and you left the parents, and the parents are broken. And I do believe America's Day of Reckoning is coming. We had 350, make sure that number, I think it was 357 or 355 Indian schools where the children had to go. And they were there, and the last school closed, y'all, in 1996, 25 years ago. 1996, I'm an adult. Why did I not know about this? See, that's what bothers me. It's been kept a secret, but how can it be kept a secret, you know? In the 1980s and 90s, survivors were given, get this, given permission to sue the government of Canada and the church. They were given permission. So in South Dakota, there was a school in South Dakota, and the parents camped near the school. And there's a picture of one of these pictures of it. The the parents camped near the school so they could be close to their children. Yeah, T.S. Jackson, 1996, 25 years ago. I was a grown person. I should have known about this. You know, we could have made a difference even back then. There were 25 federally funded non-reservation schools in America that were ran from the 1800s. The last one was 1996. But there were 357 schools in America. They're in 30 different states, y'all. 30 states. Carlisle School was ran by Henry Pratt. He was head, and he is quoted as saying, "Kill the Indian and save the child." Well, guess what? They didn't care if they killed the Indian and killed the child. They just bury him.
Look at that, though. 1968.
Yeah, the federal government assumed responsibilities. That tells you something, doesn't it? So, Sitting Bull was asked about being an Indian, I guess, and he said, if the Great White Spirit wanted me to be born a white man, he would have made me one. And you know, today, that's what I say. If God had wanted me to be any other color, any other nationality, he would have had me born that way. I am what God created me to be, and I should not have to apologize for the color of my skin, the country I live in, the sex I am, or anything else.
Let's see, that's 1997. School closes.
Yeah. But the last students were 1996. There's some books out there. There's a book called A Healing Journey for Us All, and another one called Our Legacy. Canada has paid out $3 billion. Look at all those graves. $3 billion to 40,000 people, claims. But they're fighting tooth and nail the rest of them. They had 7,000 reports about sexual abuse. 7,000 reports, okay? And when the survivors started asking for reports, they said there were no police reports of any abuse, sexual abuse or otherwise, and so therefore they would not pay. And so some children, now adults, and this man, he's the one that talked about, wait till you hear this. He's the one that talked about that when children ran away or they did something they shouldn't do, there was an electric chair that was at that school. And they would take the child and put them in this electric chair, and they made them to hold on to the metal, and then they would, with the battery, they would hook it to a battery, and then they would crank the battery to see to make the child be shocked. And he said you could see the kids twitch. They told them all they were going to be electrocuted. To me, that there's no amount of money that the Catholic Church, there's no amount of money that Canada, there's no amount of money that the U.S. has that can pay these children. They're now grown. And the ones that have come after them, that have suffered. These children that went to those schools, they didn't commit suicide at any higher rate than the children that were in just regular schools. But their children are at a higher rate by 6 to 8%. So, and he said, well, what happened was, there was one man standing there crying at the, when they were doing it before the government, and he cried and he said, I have to apologize to my children for what I did to them, because I treated them the way I was treated. I couldn't even tell my children I loved them. I could tell my great-grandchildren and my grandchildren I loved them, but I was never able to tell my children. And he's a grown man with great-grandchildren, and he's crying. Look at the faces of these young boys. The one in the middle, the priest behind me, I just want to strangle him. Because if he wasn't doing it, he knew it was being done. And the adults that were there, the nuns that were there, they are going to be held accountable. There is one school, hold on, there was one school that one of the girls said that she went to, and that she never heard of. Yeah, this is where this one, the boy I showed you that I was telling you about him seeing the electrocutions, his parents lived across the water, and he could see the house, but he couldn't go see them. One time a week on Sundays, his parents would come, or he could go there for 3 hours, but he always had to go back. There was one school, and I cannot remember the name of it. I have it written down, but all my notes are all together. This school was considered a good school. The girl said that there was a teacher there that loved them. They knew they were loved. And she would take them on outings. They were able to laugh and just have a great time. She said she did not know of any abuse that went on. Now, that's not to say that it didn't, but look at this. I mean, and then remembering what I brought to y'all before about the newspaper, that letter from that woman who said she was given $10 and she wanted to to get an Indian child to come to work on her farm or whatever. Remember, they could get an Indian child for $10 for the whole summer. And if they didn't go back, oh well. So anyway, Tommy's going to continue to put some of the pictures up there. This was a hard one tonight. I'm sorry. I just was so angry when I started hearing about the graves. And as of today,
Here's these said they were going to be electrocuted. Then we were told we were going to be electrocuted.
See, look, this was at St. Anne's, House of Court. Then we were told we were going to be electrocuted. What do you do to a child as young as 5 years old?
They look scared.
They look scared to death. As of today, there's well over in one school grounds alone, there was I think it was 754 graves. It's going to be astronomical. Most of the images in the documentary have been provided by Sheen Walk Residential School Center at Alvin University, the Indian Residential School Survivors Society, and Cumberland County Historical Society. The people describe that the stories are not necessarily those depicted in the images. That's one of, some people don't want to be known. Okay. Next. Slow. You're slow.
No, you're behind me.
Okay. All right. The memorial to the children taken and the families left behind. Wallacay is testimony to the strength of human heart. The children would see the northern lights, and they called the northern lights Wallaching. The Indian Act, first passed by Canada in 1876, imposed federal government control over virtually all aspects of the Aboriginal daily life. The Indian Act established the Crown as responsible for educating and caring for the country's indigenous people, and thus the Indian residential schools were established. Schools were established before then. They were established in 1832. Their primary purpose was to assimilate the natives in European influenced Canadian society. The system forcibly separated children from their families for extended periods of time and forbade them to acknowledge their indigenous heritage and culture. Like I told you, they could not speak the language. Their hair was cut off. Their clothes were burned. They were given white people's clothes, and they could not speak in their language. I just can't imagine you being a child because you can't understand. Look at all this children. It's hard to imagine 150,000 students. This is a whole group that was picked up and was being taken to one of the schools. And you can see there's young children there. Look at these faces, y'all. They're so little.
Go back to that.
They are so little.
You don't see any happy faces there.
All of them have their hair done. Okay, some of you are talking about PTSD. If you suffer from PTSD, you need to go and get help because there is help out there. If you suffer from depression, there is help. Go and talk to someone. I am doing everything in my power to talk my son into going and talking to someone because of all the things he's seen and he's been a part of over the past few years that it just they derailed his life. They really have. And I agree, Stephen. I mean, if PTSD is hopeless, I mean, he needs to get some help, and he's fighting, and he doesn't think it's going to do any good, but I believe it will. And you know, look at the Indian reservations now. It is full of drugs and alcohol, and prostitution, and 29% rate of kidnappings and disappearances of men and women and children. 29% is crazy, but it all stems back to this. I believe it does. I believe that because of what was done to the Indian children and families, and if you look at what they've done now, this just came to mind. Okay, what they do, they took the children away from their parents, and this is Christmas time. See that? And now, when we look at what the government did in the 60s to the African American families, you know, they got more money from the government if there wasn't a father in the home. So, okay, take the fathers out of the home, and what have you got? You've got young men and young women growing up without a father in the home, mother having to work more, and not having the love of a father. And every child needs a safe home and a mother and a father. I really wish Tommy and I had adopted more children. Looking back now, we both look at these precious children. show those pictures real quick while I get that out.
You ain't got but about one more left.
Okay. Sorry, y'all. I had to look at that. I had to get my cake out of the oven.
And discuss these.
Okay, I'm gonna go back and see what some of y'all have said. Or no, I'll just wait. Y'all just keep talking to me. More grades. This was today. It's coming out on the 3rd in the magazine. More grades were found, and because of these grades that have been found, the Secretary of Interior, I think, is in charge of the reservations in America, has called for there to be an investigation into the schools in America, because the Indians are coming forward and they're saying, look, we know that there are children buried at these schools also. So, they used to have relatives that went to St. Joseph's and there were horror stories. Kathleen, your relatives need to tell their stories. Get them to write them down and start getting them to our government, because right now they're looking into it. And if anybody in this country deserves an apology and restitution, it's the American Indians.
Go ahead and answer questions now, then, instead of going through that.
Okay, well, let me see this. The U.S. Bishop responds to interior. There. Let me read that part. Can you go up? The
Responding an announcement to the Department of Interior.
Yeah. This is the Interior Secretary that has called for an investigation, and the spokesman for the Catholic bishops issued a cautious statement on June 28th, noting that the conference would look for ways to be an assistant to the Interior Department's investigation. I call bull. They aren't going to want this stuff to come out. They're not going to help.
I read the next paragraph, Dana.
We're deeply saddened by the information coming out of 2 former boarding school sites in Canada. We cannot even begin to imagine the deep sorrow these discoveries caused in Native communities across North America. Is there more?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all, I'm about 30 seconds behind him. It's important to understand what might have occurred here in the United States. Therefore, we are following closely the announcement last week by the Department of Interior of the formal inquiry into the residential boarding schools. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops will look for ways to be an assistant. I call bull. I don't believe they will. They look at how bad they covered up the was it the Boy Scouts they were involved in? Yeah, the Boy Scouts. Look at how they cover up. Y'all, as I was doing this study on the American Indian and the residential schools, I came across articles about the Catholic orphanages and how abusive they were and everything that went on. I'm sorry, but the Catholic Church is not somewhere that I would want to send my children. I wouldn't want to spend any money there. And I'm not saying all Catholics. Don't get me wrong, I'm not. Because that would be like somebody lumping all Assembly of God people in with ones that hold snakes and chickens and stuff. No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying from the top up at the church, the Catholic Church, there's a problem. Because they knew it was going on and they did nothing about it. Bringing this painful story to light, may it bring some measure of peace to the victims, heighten the awareness of this disturbing history, is never repeated. Beginning in 1819 and continuing through 1969, the U.S. government provided resources, logistic support for schools and Catholic churches and other religious denominations administered them. So the federal government's been involved since 1819. Isn't that amazing? But nobody knew. Nobody knew anything. In Canada, hundreds of graves have been detected with ground-penetrating radar at just, y'all, this is just 2 sites. Canada, in the recent week, thousands or more expected to be discovered at other sites in Canada as they are investigated. A 6-year investigation of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission uncovered multiple counts of brutality, negligence, sexual abuse within the resident school network. The Department of Interior is, for the first time in U.S. history, being led by Native Americans who praise God. On June 22nd, Secretary of Interior Deb Haaland ordered the investigation into the history of the U.S. boarding schools, which had served as a model of Canada's network. Oh, great. So we served as a model for Canada. And search for the graves of children who died in them. The initiative that represents the first formal national effort to investigate the history of the Indigenous children. Government is attempting to acknowledge what Haaland referred to as a dark history. It's a very dark history. More than 2 decades ago, Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs Kevin Gover issued an apology for the emotional, psychological, physical, and spiritual violence committed against children at the off-reservation school. Then in 2009, President Barack Obama quietly signed off on an apology of sorts that was buried deep in a multi-billion dollar defense spending bill. The language has been watered down from the original legislation introduced years earlier. A member of the New Mexico Laguna Pueblo, Ms. Haaland outlined the initiative while addressing members of the National Congress of American Indians during the group's mid-year conference. Ms. Haaland said she hoped it would shed light on the unspoken traumas of the past. I know that this process will be long and difficult, she said. I know the process will be painful. It won't undo heartbreak and loss that so many of us feel. But only by acknowledging the past can we work towards a future that we can all be proud to embrace.
That's it.
So there's no telling how long it's going to take for them. Okay, sing to message to Soprano. She says, I've been watching the videos with the flags on the graves. They're going to find abuse. I think the biggest problem is going to be limited DNA database for Indigenous people. You know, I wonder if they would be willing, if every American Indian that there is would be willing to give their DNA so that these children that are buried in these
Would
graves,
you trust the government if the government's? They're not going to trust the government. Government's broke every treaty they ever signed with the Indians.
See, well, I am glad to know that it is an American Indian that's in charge of the reservations right now. I'm glad to know that we have an Secretary of Interior that is Indian. That is good. Okay, who had a question? Somebody had a question. And I can't. Bonnie, who had the question? We'll try to answer it. So I know this was a hard one, y'all, and I knew it was going to be tough because it tore at my heart. And y'all know that the children are the ones that tear at my heart the most. That's why we highlight the missing children so much. I did a story when I was in college. I had to do a speech. And the teacher told me, she said, do a speech on something that really touches your heart. And so I did my speech on the Amerasian children. Those children left behind in Korea, and Vietnam. And one of the stories that I read was about a little boy, 3 years old, sitting in the sand, and he was rubbing his arms and legs with sand, and they were bleeding because he had rubbed them so bad. And the reporter asked him, he said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Trying to get the American out of me." He had been thrown out on the streets because he was half American and half Vietnamese or half Korean. I don't remember which city he was from, which country he was from. But that broke my heart. We got children, American children, that are still over in Vietnam, in Korea, in Japan, that have been left behind. And over there, they are not considered anything better than dogs. And in the 70s, I did my report on that. I, I just,
And they eat dogs over there, so that
yeah,
we're not saying
yeah.
that they're saying. I accidentally put that up
Erin
there.
said she would not trust the government. Yeah, that's the sewing room. You see that? So anyway, that was a tough one tonight. I wish I had a good joke to tell you to lighten the day, but I don't. I would, those of you that clicked in later on, I would appreciate it if you would pray for our son. Right before we came on, I had to hang up talking to him, and he was in a very low place, and he's feeling like that, you know, it, that city is just tearing him apart. I mean, he's suffering from PTSD, and he's lonely, and he feels like he has nothing. And I, keep encouraging him to go to God. God's the one that is going to help him through this. And if any of you are dealing with past abuse, um, I can tell you from experience that what you need to do is to give it to God. Surrender it all to Jesus. Ask Him to pour His healing oil over you. Ask Him to help you to forgive that person through Him, because that's the only way that it can be done. And I'm speaking from experience. So I'm not asking you to do something that I've never had to do. I have, and I can go to the person that abused me, and I can hug their neck, and I can tell them I love them. And they don't know I know. I was too little. They didn't think I remember. But it's okay, because that's between them and God. So, y'all, get you a journal. Start journaling. I've got 14 journals full. Start journaling to God about everything, and keep a pen and paper beside your bed at night, because I have found that God gives us dreams. He gives us visions. He gives me poems. Um, and I'm not anything special. God doesn't speak only to me. I'm sure if you took the time to listen, my thought is, this is the way I think. If I remember a dream in detail, I call it a God dream. I write it down and I ask God for the interpretation. Sometimes it comes quickly, sometimes it doesn't come for a long time. But when it does come, the interpretation, it's like, oh my gosh. And then I've had poems. God has given me poems. And, I wake up and I read the poems and I'm like, oh, and, one poem may be just for me. You know, one poem I remember I wrote down that God gave me, and in it He said, I miss you. I miss spending our time together. And then I realized that I had gotten so busy with life, I hadn't been spending the time with God that I needed to. So, y'all go get you a journal. They're cheap. You can go to TJ Maxx, Ross Dress, Burt's Outlet. You can get them for $3.99. Well, some of them are $2.99 up. You can get a nice leather one for $4.99 with scripture on the front. Go get a journal. If you've got children or grandchildren, get a journal. Start writing to your grandchildren or your even great grandchildren or your children. Just start writing to them and telling them stories about when they were growing up, or your stories when you were growing up. Just write your prayers in there for your children from God, to God. Let them see that, you're not going to be here forever. None of us are. When I'm dead and gone, my children have, as of today, they've got 15 journals to read. And I have one of them. Let's see if I can get it. I have one of them right here. Can you see it? Because I can't tell where it is.
And then you're gonna have to go up. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
But you can't read the front what it says, but
Okay, this is one of them, and on the front it says "Walking with Jesus." And all I do is I write in it, not every day, and in the back I write poems that God has given me, and here I write my prayers to God, stories that I remember.
it doesn't look like it's anything in
Yeah,
it.
it doesn't look like. I mean, it's a pretty journal, okay, and it's full of my prayers to God. So
I can show them one thing. I can show them. We showed it yesterday, but I don't know if anybody saw it. Moses trying to get out from under the door.
oh, okay. So anyway, let's say a prayer real quick for these children that are forever lost to their parents unless they can bring them home with DNA testing or whatever, because they wouldn't have any clothing to identify them by because their clothing is burned. So um, there's been a lot of stuff mentioned in here, and though I didn't read it and I don't know what to pray for, I do know that God knows. And so let's just say a quick prayer, and then Tommy will show you the video of Moses making. Moses is okay, Big Stone. He's eating, sleeping, jumping, going to the bathroom, everything. Okay, Father, we come to you right now. And God, we are so thankful that you are our Father, that we can come to you and call Abba at any time. God, we thank you that when we need to, we can climb up in your lap, lay our head against your chest, and hear the heartbeat of God, and to know, God, that you care about everything that we care about. And God, tonight was a hard night. God, what was done for those little children, it breaks my heart to know what they suffered at the hands of people who claim to be men and women of God. And God, how do these children that survive ever trust you when those people that claim to be the light of God did those evil things to them? God, I pray that you will bring healing to their hearts, their minds, their spirits, and their souls. That God, you will show them the real Jesus, the one that died for them, that loves them, and cares about everything that they're going through. God, I thank you in advance for the fact that you're going to reveal all of these children that have died, all the suffering that they went through. It will come to light. You will bring it to light, God, because your word says that those things done in darkness will be brought into the light. Those things done in secret will be shouted from the rooftop, and those things covered up will be uncovered. And God, so we come to you right now and we ask God that whatever reckoning that has to come to America and to Canada and any other place that is abusing and killing children, God, that whatever has to happen, God, we ask that it stops. Stop allowing these children to be hurt like this. God, every day we hear of more children being taken and beaten and killed. God, it's so bad, and sometimes by their own parents. But God, I think it's even worse. Maybe I don't know, but I think it's even worse, God, when it's somebody who has the cloth on that claims to be a child of yours that abuses and destroys children's lives. God, we ask for peace. God, there's so many things that are going on in this group. God, I saw somebody's having IRS issues, and God, I know that you know the issues that we're going through. You know the hurt. You know the fears. You know the financial difficulties. God, there is nothing that happens to us that has not been filtered through your hand. Your word says that we are in the palm of your hand, and nothing gets to us, God, unless it first gets through your hand. And so, God, because of that, we know that you have given us the ability to pass and to wait and to know, God, that you have heard us. And God, I taught my children that even a paper cut on their finger you cared about. And I believe that, God. I believe you care about everything that we care about. And so, God, I ask right now that you even now just begin to pour your peace and your healing oil, God, through every life that is on here tonight. God, let peace fill their home and joy and laughter. And they're in the area where there are marriages in trouble, God, I ask that you remind them of what they, the day they got married, how in love they were, and how hopeful they were for the future. And let them go back to that time, God, and to remember and then to go forward and to know, God, that you've got this. And God, I just praise you. I thank you for being the Father that you are to us. I thank you for the peace that you bring us, the joy, the love. And God, we wait for the return of Jesus Christ. We wait for him to split that eastern sky wide open. And there are days, God, that we say, even now, come, Lord Jesus. Father, I pray that we will be a witness to everyone that we encounter. God, help us to be kind. Help us to edify, encourage, and build each other up, not to tear each other down. And God, until we come together again, I ask that you keep us safe. Guard our mouths so we do not gossip. Guard our hearts and guard our thoughts. And God, remind us to weigh our words before we speak because we can't take them back. And Lord, we just praise you and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, can y'all see these little feet that keep popping out from under there? Watch. But this is how we keep him safe. Come here, Moses. Come here, Moses. Cause see his hair? I'm sorry, I almost got your tail, didn't I? Come here. Come here. Let's show him what you did last time. Let's show him. He got underneath the recliner, and look at what he did. I mean, just tore his hair out. So yeah, he gets put in the bathroom now. Ain't that right, Maggie? Moses has to go to the bathroom.
Now, it's not all the time. That's just when we close the slides up for us to travel. Because last time he got up under the chair and we were trying to close the slides up, and so we let the recliners down and he got mangled up in the mechanism, which scared me to death.
Okay, listen. I want to hear from y'all come next Tuesday that you guys have gone out and got you some journals and you have started journaling. Because you're not going to remember your life. We forget so much.
I'm putting it all on YouTube.
Oh, Lord.
Not everything, of course, but...
Hey, we hope you have a happy 4th of July. Remember what it's about. We're going to be in Indiana. I don't know what we're going to do for the 4th. We may go watch the parade up in town in Napanee. Go watch the parade and watch the fireworks. Okay, wait a minute. Kathleen has news. Okay, Kathleen, what's your news? You'll have to tell me again. Melinda, you've been journaling longer than, well, no, I've been journaling longer than you because I'm older than you, but I started at 15. Yes, God is on the move. Okay, what is Kathleen's news? Is she pregnant? She might get mad about that. I'm kidding. Kathleen, type your news. Oh my gosh, I'm going to try to go back and find it. Kathleen.
I may have said Kathleen has news. Didn't see it in text.
I don't know what it is. And read my last text. Oh, come on, tell me. Yeah, I wish I was 36. I'm 36 and holding 28. Yeah. I'm 36 with 28 years experience. How about that? Okay, Kathleen. Maybe Kathleen didn't want to share her news with us. Beach bum. Maybe she didn't want to share. Oh, she said, hold on. Okay, we're holding on. I made the butter pecan cake.
Here's what she says. I have some good news.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
We're here. We're waiting.
We're waiting. Come on, Kathleen. Drum roll. Anyway, guys, the guys that are working on the RV, I made them potato chip cookies one day, an apple cobbler the next day, and then I made them butter pecan cake today, the one that has the icing in it. My brother is up and around, sitting in a chair. Oh my gosh, praise the Lord. Kathleen, that is awesome. Oh my
That is
gosh.
great.
Because he had the Widowmaker heart attack.
That is very
awesome.
great.
Praise the Lord. God gets all the glory for that one. He gets all the glory for all of them. Thank
That
y'all.
is good.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying the RV channel. It's not growing as fast as we'd like for it to, but it's okay.
That's
Kathleen,
awesome.
you tell your brother that's a praise the Lord that we have been praying for him. And we believe in the power of prayer.
Absolutely.
That's some good news. That is great news to end the show on.
That is.
That's uplifting. That's what we needed.
That
the
is.
doctor doesn't understand. Said he should be dead. Well, you know what? The doctor doesn't know your brother, and he doesn't know your God.
All right. Good night, y'all. We love you.
Maggie, do you think you're going to drive? No, you're not. Maggie, you can't drive. Maggie, you can't drive. You need to get down. Come on. Thank you. Woo.
Maggie thinks she can drive. She sits in that seat all the time, and everybody just says hi to her, and she gets to see all the guys working on the coach, and she just loves everybody. All right, well, good night, y'all. We love you, and we'll be praying for everybody that needs some prayer. One that will be praying for y'all and your family and your dad. God bless y'all. We love you. See you Tuesday.